to put this in a bit of a global context about the scope of women's economic rights and gender equality. Secondly, the cost of women's exclusion, as we see in the case of Afghanistan after primary school. And third, the benefits of their inclusion with an idea towards strategies we can commonly employ. So first, gender equality in economic participation and opportunity is actually in decline globally. So according to the World Economic Forum's Global Gender Gap Report for 2023, women have about 59.8% of the level of labor force integration and economic opportunity as men do globally. At our current pace of change, it will take 169 years to close this gap. So what about the cost of women's exclusion as we see in Afghanistan right now? And I would say this is truly staggering. So according to McKinsey's Global Institute, as of 2020, they estimated that global wealth would increase by $12 trillion if each country improved economic gender equality at the rate of the fastest country in that region. True gender equality everywhere would lead to an increase of about $28 trillion in global wealth, which is over a quarter of global GDP right now. Within Afghanistan, as the secretary mentioned earlier, there's $1 billion cost every year to banning women from education, according to UNDP estimates. So what about the benefits of women's economic inclusion? And here again, I would say these are threefold at least, if not more. So simply possessing independent access to income changes families and communities. So we have evidence from people like Esther Duflo looking at the case of South Africa that simply providing extra material transfers, in that case to grandmothers, led to significant increases in nutrition and development for children, especially girls, closing the height gap between children in the US and in South Africa. And if we do things like initiatives we're talking about here today, training in how to use bank accounts, as Erica Field, Rohini Panda, and co-authors find, this increases women's incentives to work. And within 3 years of providing access to digital literacy and bank accounts, they find that norms shift for women, increasing their motivation to work, but also changing support within households and within broader communities to provide much broader foundations for economic gender equality. Secondly, property rights, we know, have a transformative effect for women. So despite the fact that only 42 countries in the world legislate equal gender rights, we find that where women have property rights, they exert greater authority within household decision-making, investing more in children's education and health, which improves health for everyone in the broader community. We see lower rates of domestic violence within families, which improves mental health for all. And we see women investing more effectively in agricultural production, creating greater economic yields which benefit entire communities. But what I find in my work is legislating gender equal property rights and other economic rights alone is not sufficient. And this is because of reluctance to enforce women's rights by bureaucrats, politicians, and stakeholders in the status quo within families themselves. And so in order to actually bring about effective economic rights, I find that this requires changes in women's leadership. So in places like India, where we see quotas for women as elected heads of local government, this enables women to effectively claim economic rights when they have bargaining power within their families. In the absence of bargaining power, we see backlash across generations. So sons refusing to care for parents in old age, women experiencing greater levels of domestic violence within their families, and parents carrying out higher rates of female infanticide. So how do we actually bring about change? So if we look around the world, work that I've done with Nikar Gaikwad, we find women are uniquely in favor of government policies to build inclusive economies. And women are also more willing than men to fund these policies via taxation and broader forms of state intervention. But women are typically less likely to engage the state than men. And this is due, at least in large part, to norms and infrastructure that privileges male ownership of wealth and management of wealth. Where we see things like economic resources being given to women in solidarity groups and things like microfinance, we find women engaging much more effectively in collective action to advocate for states and broader communities to take their rights seriously. And as we see, this can bring about really virtuous cycles of change, such that where norms themselves shift, we actually see gender gaps not closing but reversing. So women can actually be, in these kinds of contexts, more active advocates for economic growth and resilience for the entire community. And so I would say, just the big picture, where we can facilitate women's wealth, this drives investment in health and education, human capital more broadly, effective economic development, and use of the state to improve collective well-being. And these are the main drivers of long-term sustainable development and growth. So that's our, I think, our collective aims, and I look forward to achieving them together. Thanks, Isabel.
Leah, let's turn to you. You're doing this really interesting and innovative project with Coursera. And as we heard Secretary Blinken talk a little bit about it, how is that going to work? It's global for Afghan women. How is it going to work for women in Afghanistan and also globally?
Sure. Thank you. So let me start by telling you a little bit about actually how will this work. And then one of the questions I was actually asked in the briefing notes was, is this really going to work? Like, why should we believe that we can actually give access to education? I appreciated that question. So the Coursera program that will be made available in Afghanistan is through partnership with the State Department and AWARE. And this gentleman over here, Fahad, is the real visionary behind the program, and I appreciate your vision. But the idea is that in phase one, it will make available learning to about 200,000 women in Afghanistan. They'll be able to learn business and entrepreneurship skills, technical skills, web development, leadership. It'll be in their local language. They'll be able to access learning on their mobile phone. They can study and join classes with professors from around the world. A lot of the learning is from leading tech companies like Microsoft and Amazon and Cisco. And they'll also be able to join learning communities. So to learn not only in community with other women in Afghanistan, but others around the world who are learning. And so it's a powerful tool both for those who want to gain digital skills to get new jobs, or for women who want to start their own companies. And I think we saw a tremendous example here. Now, what are the reasons to believe that a program like this might work? One, I think, goes to this sort of fundamental change in the global economy. In the past few years, in the wake of huge digital transformation around the world and the dearth of people in the world who have technical skills, what we're seeing is that more and more companies are willing to do skills-based hiring. They're willing to employ people who have other ways of demonstrating that they have skills, who've earned certificates, like the certificates that can be earned on Coursera, and to take a leap in ways that just wasn't happening in the global economy years before. The second big change that we've seen is that post-COVID, with so many companies going remote and hiring people remotely, is that we are seeing a globalization of talent, which means that companies are taking a risk to hire anyone, anywhere, who can prove that they have skills. And appreciate how different this is. I would say one of the most meaningful moments in my career was actually about 5 years ago. A delegation had come from the Ministry of Education from a country in Southern Africa. We had a big discussion on how we could create a similar program like this connected to skills development. And we architected a beautiful program. And then at the end, the minister came up to me and he said, "What are we going to do about the jobs part? Can you actually help us create jobs in the country?" We're in a very different world now. It's very possible that so many of the women who now learn on this platform, who earn their credentials, they can pursue entrepreneurship and they can start a business, or they can be employed globally. And so that's something that really, really gives me hope. I think the second thing that gives me hope is just the data that we've seen from past projects. So about 2 years ago, we did a global survey of 10,000 women who were learning in emerging economies on Coursera. And we found 3 things. One, we found that 30% have reported career benefit from the learning. 50% of the women who had joined Coursera because they wanted to start a business or advance their own business reported that they had done so. And most striking of all, and you can decide how you want to sort of weigh this in your mind, is we asked what the #1 benefit of the skills-based learning was, and people said it was the opportunity to create more confidence. So I'll leave you with that, but we're really hopeful for this program and looking forward to leveraging all sorts of global best practices that we've learned over the years and bring them to Afghan women.
Thank you. Fahad, maybe we can turn to you because Qatar has chosen to be supportive of this program. Qatar has been really a very important voice in reaching out directly to the Taliban about these restrictions on women and girls, and frankly contesting them in the vein of Islamic tradition. You know, Qatar itself is an Islamic country that has prioritized education above all as the most important intervention for women and men. And I think that we can only encourage you to keep at it with the Taliban. But in the meantime, you're finding these new and interesting ways to engage women on the educational front. So tell us a little bit from your perspective about Coursera.
Yeah, thank you very much. I'd like to start first of thanking the State Department and Special Envoy for this special invitation and all my colleagues today. I think I will start with Coursera very quickly. I think I would like to really appreciate this partnership with Coursera. I think, as you stated, the bridge between academic and economy for empowering girls for employment. I think this is very key. This is what encouraged us really to look at this very important partnership. But this is not the first. I think we started since 2014, either before this new regime, you know, we have supported Afghani girls and women in Malaysia, in Pakistan, in Qatar, Iraq, either in the state now and in Paris. So I think the very important things is that we want to go with is this, how we could encourage, as you stated, I think Qatar have this dialogue, you know, directly with the government there, and there are, from the government perspectives, they are working on this, you know, and trying to put different proposals, and we are working with some people here as trying to encourage of, as you stated, us as Islamic countries, with other countries like Indonesia and other countries, we are working very hard, trying to put lots of proposals, lots of approach, you know, different approaches of how this could be addressed. But what's the things that we need to be positive to about it is that online is important, but we are encouraging to make it really in hybrid ways. We want the girls to go to schools. I think seeing this video today of how girls really crying, not going to school, this will not be, I think, you know, accepting for any parents that they have accepted this. So I think what we want to really thinking of very positive ways today here and say that we are supporting a lot. We are giving a lot to Afghanistan. It's not us, either the state, you know, and through USAID are working very hard, and they're most of the biggest partners, you know, giving all the support through UN agencies and other inside Afghanistan and outside Afghanistan. I think this women that we want to empower and how give them a bridge for this economy, this will be very key components. Unfortunately, one major issue going on now is we see a lots of huge declines, you know, going funding for these programs. And I think this is not acceptable. You know, we don't want to give up for this. We need to, you started to say, we need to keep the push. And I think this is something that we need to encourage all the others, you know, who be either sometime not only in funding perspectives, but either in the policy side, we can, you know, have a certain recommendation. How can we really come in different ways, innovation, technology, creativity. I think this is one of the things that we want to support. Last, before I close, I believe that one of the strongest programs that we have worked inside Afghanistan is to work through the community. The community is really the strong base for us. You know, I encourage the community to be part of that. I think this is very, very important because we need to start influencing the community with the leaders, you know, of how to be convinced. And one of the things that we have done after COVID, which was a